Hi guys, thank you, Naomi. So first of all, my name is Aviad. I've been with Cynet for the past about 4 years, and among my responsibilities, I basically lead everything that has to do with cybersecurity here at Cynet. I also lead the product team. I lead the security research teams, our SIOPS, our 24/7 MDR team as well, and so I'm very glad to have this opportunity to basically go over the results with you. Um, and again, being our partners, I want to share a lot of different things, a lot of interesting things that we can take from the evaluation results. Uh, so I'm going to cover also some stuff that you can't find on our website, but you would need to do like a deeper analysis, to compare between Cynet and other vendors out there on the market. So I want to make sure that you're getting all the right tools. So whenever you're meeting, a prospect or one of your customers, you'll be able to use the information that I'm going to talk about today, and then use it to perform objection handling, or convince someone that Cynet is the right solution for them. So in terms of the agenda for today, so first I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I can, but the main thing that I wanted to discuss today is the results and how to interpret them and how to compare them. So I'm going to give a very short background about what MITRE is, what is the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and I'm going to talk about the evaluations itself, what is their methodology, how they are constructed, what scores are given, what is not given, and so on, and then obviously show you our results and then some analysis between Cynet results and other vendors. I'm also going to cover some of the other vendors' press releases and show you what inaccuracies they have there, or how they choose to talk about something and how you can best fight it. And then obviously I'll leave some room for Q&A. So first of all, what is MITRE? So MITRE is an extremely large organization that is part of the federal government. They're doing a lot of things. Most of them are not even related to cybersecurity. And their slogan is about solving problems for a safer world. However, one of the divisions that they do have in MITRE that is called the MITRE Engenuity, and that one is focused around cyber, uh, is basically conducting a yearly evaluation. Okay, but it's not just that, and obviously we'll talk a lot about the evaluation. But they're doing a lot of research in terms of cybersecurity, both in like the enterprise world, but also in terms of OT, so not just IT. And one of the cool things that they've done is they basically compiled what is called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So again, I'm sure most of you are already aware and know that framework, but what they actually did is that, again, they created some sort of a dictionary about how malicious actors go about and perform the actions that they want to do. So basically each column here is called a tactic. And the meaning of a tactic is why would an attacker do what he did? So as an example, okay, and you can see I'm going to cover it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So let's start with initial access. Okay, the first two columns are quite new, but the first one we can say it's initial access. So obviously, when a malicious actor wants to infiltrate into an organization, the first thing that they have to do is to gain initial access into an organization, right? And then they have to perform execution, meaning that they have to execute some sort of code, right? They can send an email, a spear phishing email or a phishing email that would be something that can act as an initial access, but then later on they would want to run their code, install their implant, and so on. So that email would have to include, let's say as an example, a Word document that contains a malicious macro. So, and by having the victim double clicking it, that would allow the attacker to execute their code. then the attacker would want to gain persistence, right? And to escalate their privileges, to go from a regular user privileges to someone who has maybe domain admin credentials. And obviously they want to evade, solutions such as Cynet, right? They don't want us detecting them. Maybe they want to steal credentials. Okay, they can either, do it by many ways, but definitely they want to do it. They want to discover, users or other machines on the web, and then they want to move laterally across the organization, collect information, send it back to their command and control channel. Maybe they want to exfiltrate data, okay? And maybe if they're a ransomware, they want to, impact the organization, right? They want to encrypt information, encrypt data, and so on. So these are the tactics. But every cell in every column is what we call a technique or a sub-technique. You see some of them can even break down into more specific techniques. So technique is the how, okay? It answers the how. How does an attacker do it? So let's take an example. Let's take credential access, okay? So there are many different ways to gain credentials. One of them would be input capture, meaning that, there's a keylogger on the machine, right? Input capture, I think is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the sixth one from the top, and it's about, let's say, a keylogger, okay? Someone who is capturing the screen to see, which capturing the keyboard presses to see which keystrokes are used to fill a password. Okay, so that is basically the how. And then what MITRE did is that for every tactic and every technique or sub-technique, they created a complete entry setting, what it is, how does malicious attackers use it, and then even examples of APTs or advanced persistent threat, or in general just attack groups that are using or taking advantage of these techniques to perform their malicious activity. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework is really a very good way to get your bearings and understanding how malicious actors are doing what they do, and that allows us as defenders to get better understanding of what they are doing, how they are doing that, and allows us to, basically create the detections. So that's the intro of the MITRE ATT&CK framework and MITRE in essence, and then now we can go to the MITRE ATT&CK evaluation. So first of all, what is the motivation? I mean, why do we have the MITRE ATT&CK evaluations? And I want to quote two quotes. Basically, I want to talk to you about two quotes that MITRE are saying. So the first one is, vendors are using the MITRE ATT&CK framework to articulate their capabilities, right? I mean, they say, okay, I can detect these techniques, I have full visibility of this tactic and so on, but there is actually no neutral authority or any proof to evaluate their claims, right? I mean, I can say that I have 100% coverage of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, but again, there's no proof. So the MITRE ATT&CK evaluation is basically fills this void and acts as as a proof to that. Another motivation is that these evaluations empower users to make more informed decisions on endpoint detection capabilities for a transparent evaluation process. Okay, so that means that MITRE enables the world, or this, let's say, CISOs or IT admins or CIOs to get the data that comes back as the result of the evaluations, and it allows them to make more informed decisions about which vendor they want to purchase. Okay, so the MITRE ATT&CK evaluations are an open, transparent, and unbiased testing process. All of the results are being uploaded to the website, so you can actually go to their website, okay, and see all of the results. I'll show you an example later on, but basically you can go on to MITRE's website, okay, search for whatever evaluation you want. That is the last evaluation was the 5th, so you can select Turla. That's the one, and then choose which scenario, see which participant you want to show and you get the full results. Okay, so you can do it with every vendor. You can even compare different vendors. And you can even replay the evaluation yourself if you want to do that. That's a lot of work, but they upload all of the tools that they are using, so you can basically do that. In addition, the attack evaluation is basically a compilation of simulated attacks that are inspired by genuine threat actors. Okay, so they actually, on a yearly basis, they choose an attack group that is, you know, very significant. They've wreaked a lot of havoc around the world, around certain areas, and there are a lot of research papers about these attack groups, and so they basically use them to build an entire evaluation that is inspired by this threat actor, and then they test detection and prevention. The majority Okay, the majority of the evaluations are around detection. Okay, prevention gets only a few hours on the last day. So the majority is around detection and how the tool, Cynet or any other tool, basically provides detection for the different attacks they're doing. So what they are not, okay, so they're not scoring or ranking. It's not entirely true, okay? They're not ranking. They will never say that this vendor is number one and that vendor is number two. They're not giving, scores to vendors. But they are giving scores to specific attacks, okay? So I think like in this year, there were 143 different attacks. So each attack gets a score, or they call it a detection category, but there is no score to say that Cynet is better than another vendor. Okay, so scores are what we as vendors, or just people around the world, can take the raw result and create the scores based on these raw results and based on different metrics, and I'll go into that. Also, MITRE are not testing for false positives at all. It's actually very hard to understand how they can test against it. So it's all about either false negatives or obviously true positives. Cool. So now we're getting to this year's evaluation. We had 30 vendors participating in it. At the end, after the results were published, Check Point left the evaluations. I'm guessing, again, we had all of the. They are saying that they had some technology issues there, technical issues with MITRE, with the evaluation itself. I find it hard to believe, since their results were uploaded to the website. They did not give up, somewhere along the evaluations. They not forfeited somewhere along the evaluations. Only after we got all other cohort results, then they forfeited. So they're actually 29, but we started 30. And again, this year is around a specific malicious group, tech group that is called Turla. Okay, it's a Russian-based threat group that's been active for well over 2 decades, with victims in over 45 countries. It mostly affects government agencies, diplomatic missions, military groups. They are doing it mostly for espionage. Okay, so it's not about ransomware, but that kind of gives you the sense that we are talking about a very significant and technological and stealthy attack group. So it's not a bunch of script kiddies, that are wreaking some havoc, or I don't know, collecting a few dollars. It's about a very significant attack group. Okay, and being able to detect the activities that they are doing is, showing that it's amazing. Okay, like on a day-to-day basis, the attacks that we are seeing at Cynet are are not nearly as major as the attacks that they are doing. So being able to withstand much more sophisticated alerts, that says a lot about the tool. Okay, cool. And so some of the examples that they've used throughout the evaluation, again, it's stuff like exploitation in kernel level, a lot of Linux and Windows as well. Okay, so they're not testing Mac at all. They are testing Windows and Linux. A lot of phishing, spear phishing, exfiltration via Exchange server, and so on. So this year's evaluations was they really upped the ante. It was much more difficult than past years, and when you see the results, you understand, that the bar was higher, and also our results were higher, and that's amazing. And so um, what I'm showing you here is basically the Windows and Linux in scope technique. So obviously I showed you the MITRE ATT&CK framework earlier. There are, I don't remember the exact number, somewhere around 600 or 700 different entries within it. And this is the table. And now everything that is painted in blue, which has the blue background, are the techniques that were in scope for both Windows and Linux. So you can see there are hundreds of different techniques here. So that means that as a vendor, you have to come really prepared for the evaluation. So they're not saying, okay, we're going to test like 10 sub techniques or techniques, and then you have to be proficient in those techniques. There are tons of different techniques that, as a tool, you have to be proficient with. So a bit about the scenario. So I'm not going to go into all of the details, but basically they have two scenarios, okay? And as you can see, they're very complex. They include both Windows and Linux. They also include Exchange servers, and they include many steps, which you can see on the right-hand side. So for the first day, on day one, there was a specific scenario which consisted of 10 steps. In day two, they had another scenario which consisted of 9 steps, go through rootkit installation, discovery, lateral movement, domain discovery, another lateral movement, and then another lateral movement, and so on. So these are really complex scenarios, okay? And I want to talk a bit about the structure. So again, so basically the evaluation consists of 4 days, okay? Day 1 and day 2 are dedicated for detection. In day 1, basically MITRE executes scenario number 1, which makes sense. In day 2, they execute scenario number 2. Day 3 is basically meant for overflow. So if they're not done testing it, or there are still some screenshots that we want to share with them, so day 3 is dedicated for overflow. But it's also dedicated for configuration changes. Okay, so and I'll go into that in broader depth very soon. But basically, as a vendor, you are allowed to perform a few changes. It can be fixing bugs. It can be adding additional detection logic. It can be enabling more features. Okay, and then have MITRE retest either one of the scenarios or both of them on day 3, and then present them with new evidence about the detections, and basically do that as well. Obviously, if you, as a vendor, if you show any evidence from day number 3, then it gets a modifier, like it is marked saying that there was some sort of configuration change, but we'll get to that in a few seconds. Okay, so to summarize, so for the detection part, so basically 3 days, each day simulates a different scenario, and it's divided into steps. Okay, so 10 steps for day 1, 9 steps for day 2. Each step is further divided into sub-steps. So and so in total there are 143 sub-steps. Now each sub-step basically tests a different MITRE ATT&CK technique. So each sub-step, each one of the 143 sub-steps, okay, is directly linked to one of these cells. Okay, so as an example, in test 100, in one of the tests, I'll just want to pick something that is larger. But as an example, in one of the 143, they would test for lateral tool transfer, okay, or internal spear phishing, or drive-by compromise. Okay, so it's directly tied to one of them. Cool. With the protection part, so the protection part is on day 4. Okay, it's much less cohesive, much less comprehensive than the detection part. Basically, they have 13 standalone tests that are based on the detection scenarios. Each test is further divided into substeps, so that's a total of 131 substeps, and each test is executed. So each substep, let's say they go to test one. Let's say test one has 10 substeps. They execute each and every one. Whenever they are blocked, they are stopping with this test because obviously they are blocked. They cannot continue, and then they move to test number 2. So it's really important not just to stop a test, but also to stop it as soon as possible. Okay, so if there's a test and you stop it on the 10th, right, on the 10th substep, then that means that 9 substeps were executed successfully before you intervened as a vendor. Cool. So a bit of explanation about how MITRE assigns detection categories for each substep. Okay, so and that is really important. So again, out of for the detection part for day 1 and day 2 and also day 3, and for each one of the 143 substeps, each of these substeps eventually gets a score, okay, gets a detection category. And the detection category goes from none, the NA is non-applicable, that's only relevant is if, for example, they're testing on a Linux machine, and as a vendor, you do not have a tool that supports the Linux machine, so you're getting a not applicable. Obviously, that's not the deal with Cynet. Okay, so our scores can start from a none to technique. Okay, so let's start with the highest one, that is called the technique. So basically, whenever MITRE are performing an attack, our job is to provide them with an alert or with a forensic view, but something in our solution that shows that we were able to detect the specific behavior that they did. They, perform the brute force attempt. They want us to show them evidence of a brute force attempt. So as an example, so the technique, which is the highest score, with this, what we have to do is to give information on how the action was performed, or it basically helps answer the question, what was done, okay? So if I say, okay, this user created a brute force, use these passwords or these usernames, okay, then as an example, a SOC analyst, okay, who is using our platform, who is using Cynet, okay, can easily understand what the threat actors did. Okay, so that's the point basically. So the more information and the automation around it, the context that our solution gives SOC analysts that are using the platform of MSSPs or whatever, anyone who is using our platform, that's how they score. So with the technique score, that means that we give the most context on the specific action that was done or the specific attack that was done. The second in line is called a tactic, which means that we give information on the potential intent of the activity, or we help answer the question why this would be done. So as an example, if for a technique, I would have to say that that was part of a brute force attempt, with a tactic, I might say that I know someone tried to steal credentials, but I don't know how they did it. But I know what their motivation was, but I don't know how it was done. So I know why, but I don't know, how. With the general, it means that we see abnormal or malicious activity, but there are limited details, okay? Well, we don't know what exactly was done or why it was done, but we know something suspicious went on. Usually it could be like an antivirus alert, okay? Like there is a malicious file here, we know it's malicious, okay? But I don't know why the threat actors, used it. I don't know if they were using it to steal credentials, or if they were using it to move laterally, or okay, but I know it's malicious. Okay, and then we have the telemetry. Telemetry is not exactly a detection. It means that there is some information within our solution that gives evidence that some activity took place. Like, let's say we can see that a file was created or a file was written. But we can't say that the file is malicious. We can't say that the file that was read is, a file containing passwords, and that it was read in attempt to steal credentials. But we can just show some telemetry information that file had been read. Okay, so that gets a telemetry score, and a none is basically means that we were not able to show any evidence for that attack. So it's basically a misdetection. Okay. Um, so something that is very important to say is that one of the metrics that MITRE have is called an analytic detection. Okay, so obviously, so the first one is called an analytic detection. The second one is called visibility. Okay, I would even say that visibility is it's more important um, analytic coverage. So visibility basically means that how many of the 143 substeps were we able to show a detection for? Okay, so that basically counts how many nuns we have. So, if there are 143 different substeps and we were able to demonstrate a detection for each and every one of them, so we had 0 nouns, then that basically means that we have a 100% visibility, right? If, as an example, we have, let's say 100 a substep that have a better score than a none, okay, and 43 substeps with a none, then our visibility would be 100 out of 143. Okay, I hope that's understood. That's visibility. Now, analytic coverage means how many of the substeps, in the total substeps, were we able to show to demonstrate a detection with enough context, okay, for a SOC analyst as an example, or CIO or an IT admin, someone who is actually using our platform. Okay, so basically for analytic coverage, they are checking, are considering the technique, the tactic, and the general. Okay, so as an example, if for 143 substeps out of 143, we got only technique, tactic, and general, then we would have 100% analytic coverage. Okay. Another example would be if, let's say, out of 143, we had detection for everything, but 43 of these detections were given the telemetry detection category, then our analytic coverage would be 100 out of 143. The visibility would be 100% because we have 0 nuns. Okay. So these are the detection categories. I want to talk a bit about the modifiers that you can see here, the delayed and the config change. So with the config change, I touched it a bit earlier. On the third day, MITRE are allowing every vendor to perform some modifications in the settings and then basically do a retest. And then any evidence that would be shown by the vendors after the configuration changes would be assigned a config change modifier. Okay, and it's really important to understand it because naturally in real life scenarios, right, when we're protecting our customers, there are no second chances, right? So it's not like I can, have someone encrypt my environment and then asking them, you know what, I've enabled a few more settings. Do you mind, trying to encrypt my system again, right? That's not going to work. It does work with MITRE. I understand why they do it. They do it because at the end they want, vendors to be able to articulate their capabilities, and that's why they do it. Um, but again, they are still assigning that modifier, that modifier, so it's clear. The second modifier that they can assign is a delayed. Okay, delayed means that the vendor was able to demonstrate the detection, but there was a significant amount of delay time between the time where the action actually took place and the detect.
I think we lost you there, Aviad.
Sorry about that. I had a glitch with the handful. So, You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, great. Thank you. So again, about delayed, I was there. So we delayed. That means that the MITRE performed their red team activity at, let's say, 10 a.m. and then a vendor was able to create a detection at only 10:15. Okay, so it wasn't real-time detection. Okay, it's not when when they at what time we showed the detection. It's when was the detection created? Okay, when was it available to someone who is using the system? And sometimes the delay is because there are some engines in the backend that correlate different telemetry information to produce an alert. But then eventually, it's cool that there is a detection, but in essence, okay, or the meaning of it would be that you would have a ransomware attack and you would have detection, but it would be after the fact. So it's kind of useless, right? By the time you have a detection, you already know, that all of your information is encrypted, right? The screenshot, the screensaver changes and everything, and you can't open any of your files. So it's something that they might do show you. They do accept it, and they have that modifier in place. Uh, but again, and I'll show you that because there are some vendors who have a significant amount of delayed sub-steps, and that means that if they can defend you in real time, they can only go in hindsight and say, hey, we did detect it, then what's the value in that? It's probably more than nothing, but it's not real time. Cool. And obviously with the protections, it's about either you were able to block it and then it gets blocked, or it's a none. And it's quite easy to understand. So as an example, if I log into MITRE's website, okay, I can see that there are 3 scenarios. So Carbon is the scenario for day 1, Snake is the scenario for day 2, protection is the scenario for day 4, and then I can see with Cynet that out of the 76 different techniques that were, out of the 76 sub-steps that were tested on day 1, okay, on the Carbon scenario, 71 of the 76 got a technique detection, which again is the highest score, and 5 got the technique detection, which is the second best score. Now, in this part, you can see that we have the modifiers, okay, and as a default, both are checked in. So I can change the configuration change. I can, deselect it, and then I see that instead of 71 techniques, we had 70 techniques. Instead of 5 tactics, we had 4 tactics, and we had 2 generals. Okay. But again, even with or without configuration changes, for day number 1, we had 100% visibility. And then if you scroll down, you can actually see like the different sub-steps, which are 1A1, 1A2, and you can see the screenshots. You can click on them. You can move between them. You can see exactly the alert that we generated and so on, okay? But it's not just about Cynet. I mean, the cool thing is that you can actually do like a comparison. Okay, so as an example, I can select Crowdstrike and then have both Cynet and Crowdstrike populated next to each other. Okay, and I can easily see that on the first scenario, we had a technique, a tactic, and a general, the 3 of the best scores, while Crowdstrike had 1 telemetry. Okay, and you can deep dive into everyone and see the screenshots right next to each other. Okay, or instead of Crowdstrike, or not just instead of, but in addition to Crowdstrike, I can choose Sentinel-1. Okay, and then see that Sentinel-1 had 4 nuns. Okay, before and after configuration changes, so they still had 4 nuns. Okay, 4 missed detections, and I can go into scenario number 2 and so on. Okay, now if I go as an example to protections and choose Cynet, then you can basically see that again we have the 13 tests here. So in test number 1, there was only 1 sub-step and we were able to block it. Okay, the purple means that it was protected. Test number 2 had about 30, I think, 30 substeps, and we were able to block it on the first one. On test number 3, we did not block it on the first substep, but we did block it on the second substep, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can basically take this tool. Just I'll put it in the chat, but then it's just about googling MITRE Engenuity, MITRE ATT&CK Evaluations, and you'll be able to see that. Okay, so let's go into our results. Okay, and I'll give you some example of some sense into what does the results mean. So first of all, whenever we look at the results, we are only counting the before configuration changes. Okay, so MITRE show all of the information. We can either choose to look at it before configuration changes were applied or after configuration changes were applied. With all honesty, we did perform 3 configuration changes, but none of them made any impact on our results. Okay, so our visibility didn't change. We had 100% visibility before or after configuration changes. We had 100% analytic coverage before or after changes. So I'm saying it to be honest, but I could have just as easily asked MITRE to remove all of our 3 configuration changes and it wouldn't impact our results whatsoever. So we choose not to do it just because, marketing reasons, but I could have definitely did it. So 100% detection. What does detection mean? Okay, and a lot of vendors are saying we had 100%. What does that mean? Okay, that doesn't mean a lot, to be honest. Okay, but we're writing it because everyone is writing it, and that if we didn't write it, if we don't write it, then we're getting questions. So we're writing it. But what does it say? It says that out of the 19 steps, okay, 19 steps. Okay, remember 19 steps, and there are 143 substeps. Okay, so so that means that every substep has at least 6, 7, 8, even 15 or 16 different substeps. Okay, so that means that there was no whole step that was completely missed. Okay, so basically almost everyone can claim 100% detection because it's unlikely that there is going to be a complete step that the vendor doesn't detect any of its substeps. Okay, so if there's at least one substep within the steps that was detected, then we can say, okay, we had 100% detection. Okay, so that is not cool at all. But what is cool is that we had 100% visibility without any configuration changes. So that means 143 substeps were detected by Cynet. And that is truly amazing. But what is more amazing is that we didn't just have 100% visibility, we also had 100% analytic coverage. So, and that again, before configuration changes, that means that we had no telemetry detections. All of the detections that we demonstrated were high context ones. They were either a general, a tactic, or a technique. Obviously, the vast majority was technique. But again, these are very significant detections. Okay, and we also had 100% real-time detection. So we had 0 detections that were assigned the delayed modifier. Okay, so that is key, and I think this is actually the first evaluations ever out of the 5 that were already conducted. I think that's the first. Okay, I don't think I know that that's the first time that the vendor gets both 100% visibility and 100% analytic coverage. Okay, so that never happened before up to this year. So it's truly amazing to to make such history here, especially for Cynet. And now looking deeper into the results, what we did here is that we basically built a chart that on the x-axis has the visibility and on the y-axis as analytic coverage. And we can see that Cynet and Palo Alto are tied. Okay, are tied. We basically both had 100% visibility and 100% analytic coverage. To be honest, Palo Alto had an amazing year. Okay, they really had a good year. But we can see Cybereason a bit below that. I think they had one of the substep was a telemetry, so they don't have 100% analytic coverage. Okay, they do have 100% visibility though. Crowdstrike is close. Okay, so you can see it here, but they didn't have 100% visibility or 100% analytic coverage before configuration changes. And then we can see Fortinet, SentinelOne, Microsoft, and so on. They are much further down the road than others. And again, that's before applying configuration changes. Okay. And now looking just at the visibility and just on analytic coverage, so we can definitely see Cynet with Palo Alto and Cybereason for the visibility and Crowdstrike for with 97%, and then we see a significant, drop down from 97 to 88. So the average is somewhere around 77. So being able to stand among a giant like Palo Alto with Cynet, that is like a post-IPO company, and then show that, with Cynet, our technology is not not far behind theirs. It's not behind theirs at all. I mean, it's definitely amazing. And then with the analytic coverage, we see even that gap from Cybereason. So it's Cynet and Palo Alto. And again, these are the two most important metrics of the evaluation, no doubt about it. And being able to demonstrate such detections even before configuration changes, so before giving other vendors the opportunity to do retests. So it's real life scenarios, exactly how the tool would act in any of our customers or in any of your customers' environment, and being able to detect all of these activities, that's truly amazing. Now, configuration changes, okay? So again, we're seeing a few vendors here that did not have any configuration changes. We see Cynet with 3 configuration changes, but again, as I explained, since we didn't have any telemetry detections before configurations, then it didn't impact our visibility. Doing that 3 didn't impact our visibility or our analytic coverage. However, we do see, companies like Microsoft with 39 configuration changes. Okay, so it's almost 40 configuration changes out of 143 sub-steps. So just think, it's like a third, like they retest like a third of their evaluations. Okay, so that's crazy. Okay, and obviously it made an impact for them. So if I look at the after changes, then the results change a lot. But again, I mean, I don't know, like if for example I would go in a deal where I'm battling against Microsoft, I would tell the prospect, hey, you know what, go and ask them why they did so many changes. Weren't their tool able to detect all of these attacks with the original configuration? So how would they protect me in my original configuration here as a customer in my environment, right? So that is a question I would ask them. Fortinet with 16, even CrowdStrike with 14 configuration changes at 10% of the evaluation. Okay, Bitdefender with 44, that's Sophos with 26. Okay, these are very large numbers. And let's look at the delay detections. Okay, so I didn't show all of the vendors here because the majority of vendors don't have delay detections. I'm only showing Cynet with 0 delay detections, and I'm showing all of the other vendors that did have delay detections. And you can see, like, the worst or the top one, I don't know whatever side of the map you're looking at, but as an example, CrowdStrike had 17 delay detections before configuration changes. I believe that after configuration changes, they still have 11. They still had 11. So, I mean, that's over 10% of the evaluation that they couldn't detect in real time. I don't know what kind of engines they have in the backend, but their agent isn't capable of detecting. So if it's not capable of detecting, how is it capable of protecting or giving you the visibility of what was done? Okay, so that's important to understand that. And again, you can see Sophos here with 6 delays, and ESET and the VMware Carbon Black with 3 delays. That's an enormous amount of delays. And if I were to create a table of the different vendors, then what we can clearly see here that Cynet and Palo Alto both had 100% visibility and analytic coverage, which are the two most important metrics of the evaluation, and then seeing the overall detection rate with that 100%. So that's it for the results. I just want to do a quick review of the other vendors' press release, okay, and then leave you some time for questions, okay. So the first press release was from Crowdstrike, right? Crowdstrike achieves 100% protection, 100% visibility, and 100% detection in MITRE Engenuity ATT&CK. Okay, so they're right, but they did fail to mention that to get to that 100%, they had to perform 14 configuration changes. Okay, so the original visibility wasn't 100%, it was 97.9%, and their analytic coverage, their original analytic coverage was less than 96%, a bit less than 96%. And with that, they had 17 delayed detections. I mean, I can't even tell you how bad it is. And they only had 124 technique detections compared to Cynet's 132. Okay, so that is, I mean, you can't even compare this. Okay, so if I go again in a deal and I go against CrowdStrike, these are definitely questions that I'm going to to ask the prospect, to ask that vendor. How come you had 17 delay detections? How come you had to perform 14 configuration changes? Okay, and then, I mean, if the deal is all about the ability to detect and protect against attacks, then it's a no-brainer to win these deals. Let's look at Sentinel-1. Sentinel-1 is really funny, to be honest. Okay, so they claim they achieved 100% protection and detection. So they claim to detect 100% detection. Okay, so they detected 18 out of 18 detection steps, but I just showed you that there are 19 steps. So where did one step go? What happened to step number 19? And if you look at the results, you actually see a gray zone here that represents step number 19. So I have no idea what kind of deal they struck with MITRE and why they didn't get a none. And I have some sort of, and I can't say, okay, but you can imagine what happened, what took place there. So they are the only vendor that got a complete missing none, if I'm not a complete step, sorry, missing. Okay, so I don't know why they didn't. I mean, they took the liberty of saying they had 18 of 18 and not 18 of 19. But it's it's a false claim, right? They also had 100% real time, realistic, whatever. Okay. But they didn't have 96% visibility, right? They divided everything by 18 instead of by the amount of substeps you have with the 19 steps. And so they are not even close to it. Okay, so they failed to mention that they have one completely missing step. So every vendor says that they have 100% detection. SentinelOne is the only vendor that cannot say that. They claim to have 96% visibility. They only have 88% visibility. Okay, and they have less than 84% analytic coverage, while Cynet has both 100 in both. And they only had 110 technique detections compared to Cynet's 132. So we got technique, the highest score on 132. They only got it on 110. So like, again, if I go in a deal and I go against Sentinel-1, I would be super delighted to to ask that prospect, to ask them, how come you had only 18 steps? Okay, what happened to step number 19? I would. By the way, if you get to actually ask someone that question, please let me know what they are answering. I'm sure they have something prepared, but it's really curious. I'm really curious to learn what they're saying. So that is with Sentinel-1. With Microsoft, it's also interesting. So they claim to have 100% visibility across all stages of the attack chain in real time. It took me a few minutes to even understand what they're saying here. But again, they want to say that they have 100% visibility, but they forgot to mention that they had 39 configuration changes. Okay, so the original visibility was 85.31%, and their analytic coverage was below 80%. Okay, so they claim they had 100%, again, with third of the evaluation being retested. They eventually got to that point. Okay, if you retest enough times, then right, you'll be able to demonstrate the detection for everything. And then they created another chart that really says nothing. They created like a super strange metric that says that 100% attack technique level detections at every attack stage without delay. Okay, so they say out of the 19 steps, if I had at least one sub-step which got a technique, then I'm good for. Okay, so you can see that, I don't know, more than half of the vendors got 100% in this metric. So they only put, Microsoft put themselves in the leftmost place to look like they're number one, but you can see they are tied with so many other vendors. So they had to be very, very innovative to think of a metric that would put them in a good place, because they didn't have a good evaluations at all. So again, they performed 39 configuration changes. I don't know what's not working with their tool, that they have to do so many. They had 97 after configuration changes. They had 97.9% analytic coverage, still not compared to our 100% analytic coverage that was, achieved before configuration changes. And they only had, out of the 143 substeps, they only had technique level detections for only 97. Okay, 97 of them. Again, compared to our 148. And even if you go to MITRE's website, then you're seeing a lot of like the image here, you're seeing a lot of notable specific for this evaluation are described here. So they have a lot of disclaimers, and it just smells not good. Okay, it just smells like they had to do a lot of changes, and it really didn't go well for them. Cool. And another key thing to remember is that the evaluation, they mainly test the EPP and EDR components of Cynet or of any other vendor. But in real life, it's not just about EPP and EDR. I mean, when we are installing our tool, we do a lot of more than that, right? We have, we have the PsyOps, or you as a partner. Some of you are MSSPs, some of you are MSSPs. You have your own SOC, or you don't. But it's something in addition that you add. We have the incident response. We have the SSPM and CSPM. We have deception. We have the XDR. So there's a lot of other components which are not actually being tested. Okay, so it's also key to remember that. And with that, I've finished going over my presentation. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Hey, Aviad. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. One is, will this presentation be available for everybody? And I think the answer to that is yes. We'll send a copy of the deck to attendees after the webinar. So yeah, we're getting a lot of that, a lot of those questions. We had a question about carbon black. I don't know if you had a chance to look at carbon black, Aviad.
So carbon black, as you can see, they are number 23. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
They are number 23. So that before changes that they had 67.83% visibility and less than 50% analytic coverage. Okay, and I don't know, maybe if I go to, let's show Cynet, and I don't know if they say VMware here or Carbon Black. Here it is, VMware Carbon Black. Okay, then even with configuration changes, okay, even with applying configuration changes, on the first day, they had 17 nuns, 17 missed detections out of 76. Okay, I mean, it should be an easy win. Okay, the bad thing about MITRE's website is that you have to you reselect the vendors. But I went now to the second scenario, okay, where we had out of 67 substeps, we had 62 techniques, 62 substeps which got the highest score, 3 that got the second best score, 3 tactics, and 2 generals. Okay, that's with the plan configuration changes. Okay, if I'm look with Cynet, nothing changes. Okay, with the second day we had 0 configuration changes. You can see that the scenario one, that the summary one, doesn't change at all if I, change any of them. Let's give it, and I'll check the configuration change to give VMware like a better score. They had 23 missing substeps on day 2, 17 on day 1. That totals to 40. 40 out of 143. 0 missing detection. How can they protect anyone? Okay. Hope that helps answer. So someone asked if I can send the website. Definitely, I already sent it. It's on your chat. But I'll resend it. I'll send another link. But again, if you
there's another question. So you touched briefly at the end. What do you, aside from MITRE, which is very important, what do you think the top other evaluation criteria are that a partner should be looking for in a endpoint or XDR provider partner?
Right. So I touched it here. So as I said, with the MITRE ATT&CK evaluation, they are mainly looking at the EPP EDR. Okay, but obviously when you're testing for the vendor, then you need to see what are you getting, and what are your preferences. Are you going to do you want to automate security, or do you have your own SOC team that handles your security issues or concerns? So what other detection layers are you getting? Are you getting deception and threat hunting and user-based user and behavior analysis? Are you getting a centralized log management? Are you getting an XDR and network detection and response? So again, the evaluations test only the endpoint protection and the EDR, but you have to understand what is the complete package. And again, it's not just about the technology, it's also about the human resources, or someone who can act as a trusted advisor. So all of these are obviously not being tested, but it's definitely something that you should be looking for when evaluating a vendor. I hope that answers the questions.
Yes, very good. Yeah, I think that answers about all the questions. I mean, we do keep getting questions about getting the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, so I see someone asked about those awesome results are without any SERPs involvement. Definitely, 0 involvement. They are not allowed to create their own detections, I would say, or do any threat hunting. It's all about the technology. It's all about what Cynet automatically detects and shows in our console. Okay, so nothing. There's no I would say like manual or human-based interaction here. Okay, with someone asked specifically about golden ticket attacks. In general, there were a lot of lateral movement attacks that take advantage of domain admin users and a lot around this stuff, Kerberos, around exploitation of the Kerberos protocol and so on. And the question is yeah, I mean we were able to detect them as well. I don't remember exactly if the golden ticket was in scope, but in general a lot of different lateral movement techniques were being utilized here. based on domain admin capabilities, pass the hash, and so on. Okay, and by the way, you can see all of these charts. I think even if you look at Cynet.com, MITRE, and I just wanted to. I mean, even if you just look it up on Google, let's maybe add 2023, then you can see the blog post, and you can see most of the charts also appear. No, sorry. Here it is. That's the right one. So you can see all or most of the charts also appear here. So you'll get the presentation, but you can see everything here as well. So even if you have customers, you can, or prospects, you can send them to read these articles. You can create your own version of that article, and then enabling them to read and understand from it as well.
Aviad, I think somebody's asking for maybe another explanation of the protection scenario.
Sure. Let me show it again. So let's go into the protections and show Cynet. Okay. So basically what MITRE did with the protection is that they took the two scenarios from day one, day two, and they build the protections on top of that. Okay. So they created 13 tests. Okay. Each test is completely standalone. There is no relation between test number 1 and test number 2, even though in real life scenario that wouldn't be the case, because someone would, a threat actor would try to do something and then he'd get blocked and then he won't be able to do anything else. But they created it in a way that, even if they are blocked, they can move on to the next test. So basically they have test number 1, test number 2, and so forth until test number 13. Now, each test is comprised of different substeps, which are basically the same substep from the detection part, but now they're basically asking for a prevention. So some tests, as you can see, they have only one box, meaning that there is a single substep, and for some they have 30 substeps, okay, or less than that. Some have 2, some have 4, some have 3, some have 6, and so on. And so they basically, let's say, as an example, initial access via spear phishing link. So with this one, imagine that there is someone is getting an email with a link. He clicks that link, a browser is opened, and he downloads whatever being downloaded from there. So if you basically block the browser from downloading that file, then you're blocking this substep and consequently the entire test. Now with the second one, there are about 30 different substeps, and let's say that, I don't know, the first one is called user execution. So there is basically a file that they double click, and if you prevent it from executing, then you prevented the entire steps, the entire test. If you didn't prevent it from executing, they test substep 2, substep 3, substep 4, and so on until they get blocked or they don't get blocked at all. And so that test is considered to be not protected, and then you would have like 12 tests out of 13 tests not blocked. Okay, so I hope that clarifies that one. So for example, you asked. So for example, in step 6, we had those two. We had 2 substeps, and we missed both of them. Okay, so in this substep, they basically created a keylogger. Okay, and they executed, and we didn't block it. Now, the bump thing is that we actually did block it. Okay, and if you go to step number 6, wait. at least at the beginning. Now maybe they changed something, but at least at the beginning we did have. Here it is. So you can see it's weird, but you can see that we do have a protection for it. So you do see that it was protected, but we protected it in a bit later stage than what MITRE was looking for. Okay, and so they didn't consider it to be protected. But yeah, we weren't perfect in the protection. We had 12 out of 13. And we obviously fixed everything since then. So now if we were to retest it on, we would get 13 out of 13. So we learned from that, we improved it, and we fixed it. So that's the only thing, that I'm not satisfied, but everything else was completely amazing. And you can see after that everything was blocked in the first substep. So again, really, really amazing results.
That's great, Aviad. I think that seems to be all the questions that have come in. A lot of really good questions, and appreciate your thorough answers. Oh, yeah,
Definitely.
you want to answer one more question?
Can you say something about correlation in an XDR scenario with Cynet? Definitely. So some parts of the, in this specific evaluation, MITRE do not, take XDR into account, just because there are a lot of different vendors and not everyone have all of the capabilities. However, we do have our XDR engine running as part of the evaluation, and therefore we were able, it helped us a lot with detecting, different attacks on Exchange servers or Linux server. So there was a component, but it wasn't the full-blown XDR that, we can detect attacks on FortiGate and stuff like that. That's definitely not in scope for the evaluation. So there was a small part where we could, utilize the XDR engine and all of the benefits that it has, digesting a lot of data and creating detection and real-time detection and remediation. But it's I can't say that it's a focus for MITRE.